I'm Jonathan Charnes, and I'm going to show you how to repair a wheelbarrow. The first thing I want to tell you is you must take all precautions and use adequate safety equipment, eye protection and lung protection. This wheelbarrow has been sitting outside for 10 years and the weather has taken its toll on it, but it's still repairable. I hate throwing it out because I don't want to waste all this good metal, and it can be repaired. As you can see, there's been metal fatigue and rust where the wheelbarrow gets bolted to its bed. We can see the separation over here where the metal has started to crack. Obviously, if you have 200 pounds of cement in here, this is not going to be holding too well. This side is also starting to tear a little bit as well. The paint has covered up the cracks. The two bottom holes are in good condition. What I intend to do is put a patching plate over it. And here I have such plates. These are metal connection strips for construction, and I drilled a hole in here, and I've got this to conform, and then I'll simply pop rivet this in place. Although notice I've primed this. I'll also put a finish coat on this, and of course I primed this. I removed the rust with a wire brush and primed it. I'll also put a finish coat, and then I'll put a sealer on it as well. So these two sides will get patching plates. Now, this was a bit of a challenge to make. In addition to the poor metal over here, one of these strips was rotted, and so I had to replace it. I cut it out of this piece of wood, and this is what we have. The only difference is, as you can see, this one I painted, and this will protect it from the weather. When I drilled the holes through here, I did it by eye, and I didn't drill too straight. I should have used this drill jig. This jig assures that the bit will not wander and it goes straight through. As a result, the new hole is going to be off slightly. It won't be quite centered where the old one is, but I can simply move the patching plate over to take care of that. I probably will paint the interior here by getting rid of first wire brushing everything with an electric brush and priming it, painting it. I already did the back side, and the back side wasn't in bad condition. Didn't have all the concrete in it, but as you can see with this paint, it'll have good protection. I've also, as you can see, painted the handles. I don't want these to rot. It took 2 coats of exterior latex paint, and now the handle should be protected rather well. As you can see, the bottom framework does have rust on it, but this wire brush will get rid of the rust, and it'll get primed. So let's see. So the rust is removed rather quickly. Got all the most of the loose rust off. I need to get it a little bit more, and I'll do the rest of this rust removal off camera. I'd say one of the biggest problems I had was removing the bed. As you see, these bolts had to be removed, and they were rusted. Now, in order to remove it, required a wrench over one end, and the thing just, of course, spun around. So to keep the bolt from spinning, I had to put this vise lock on, and then I could loosen it maybe 1/4 of an inch. Of course, that chewed up the bottom threads over here. So when I got up to the damaged threads, this was loose enough to come out of the bed by about, this was, once I got this loosened and it was turned enough, then this protruded out the top, and I was able to put the vise wrench up on top and turn this from the other side over the chewed up threads. And of course that tended to rethread it. So that took about maybe 5 minutes per bolt to get off. Not too bad. And as you can see, it turns. There's a bit of rust on these, but these are still usable. And so I will continue this a little bit later on once the rust is cleaned off and I'm ready to reassemble this. So thank you. I'll get back with you later. Thanks for tuning in again. It's been about a week since I got the rust off of this wheelbarrow, and I primed it with Rust-Oleum, and then I painted it with Rust-Oleum. And no, I didn't want to spend 20 hours chiseling off all the concrete that was on the inside of it. But if you notice, I painted the woodwork white, several coats of paint, and also you can see it's a two-tone paint job. The bottom's black. Now the reason for the two-tone paint job is simple. I run out of black and I had plenty of red paint left to do the inside. But anyway, this should protect it for a long time. So this should be able to be kept outside, and it should last a lot longer than the new one, because the new one never had a primer on it. Now let's take a look at these patches. If you'll recall, the reason for these patches is because the hole, or the metal, was pretty well worn. And pull this one out, you can see the damage here to the metal. Now, this patch, of course, over here is lined up. I put the pin back in place, so once this pin is in, I know where to put the mending plate. And so, while the hole might not be exactly where it was originally, it suffices. The main thing, every time you drill a hole, you should put a pop rivet in place just to keep. As you can see, this pin lines up the plate with the wooden hole underneath. Once the plate is in place because the pin is in, now I know where to attach the plate. And of course, every time I drill a hole, I simply use this electric drill. Tell you what, let's get over here. It's just a simple matter. Drill a hole, put a rivet in. I didn't fasten the rivets. I won't do that till all the holes are drilled. And let's see. had done it on the outside, I didn't put any rivets on the inside because the wooden framework is under here. So the main thing is the area of the rivets exceeds the area of this bolt several times, and that should hold. I'm using steel rivets. Stainless steel would be best, and of course I'll paint over them when I'm done. The next step is to clean this up, and I'm going to put some primer on the bottom of here, primer on the bottom of here, prime the bolts, get some primer down the wooden hole, and then rivet it in place. I'm going to let the primer get a bit tacky before I attach this. I could probably use silicone seal, but the primer should work. I don't know how well the silicone seal would cure because it would be hard to get air in here. Paint should eventually dry if I put it on rather thin. So I'm going to clean this with Windex. And by the way, these bolts I cleaned with a wire brush. I put the wire brush on my drill press, so while I was spinning it around I knocked off all the rust. So these bolts should be okay once I prime them, and I'll get back with you when I'm ready to drive the rivets in. That'll be the last step on the wheelbarrow. See you later. Thank you. Just about ready to put the finishing touches on this wheelbarrow. We ran into an unexpected problem, and that was these bolts were rusted and they weren't tight, so this piece that holds the axle on was slipping. You see, this can be adjusted, raised up and down. Now, because it was rusted, when we look over here, notice we have some pretty big screws, and a typical screwdriver just wasn't big enough to hold them in place. So I had to use this crowbar. So with the crowbar and the socket wrench, I was able to remove these nuts, clean out the threads a bit, put some washers back here, and now it's nice and tight. And a little quick lesson on riveting. Use some steel pop rivets. Notice, put them in the hole. I get them in the hole. Sometimes it takes a little persuasion to get it in the hole. But doesn't want to go in. Try a different hole. Well, that wasn't too good. I'm going to have to drill this rivet out. Alright, so we'll just pause it a second. Well, sometimes if you don't get a rivet in right, you have to remove it, and you just use a drill and pause it. Well, the holes weren't quite lined up here, so I just drilled through again. Now it's lined up, it's nice and flush, and we'll just send it home. That's in good. This hole Little problem, probably have to get a shorter rivet because these are winding up hitting something. Okay, no reason why this isn't going to go in nice and tight. And that's the last rivet. Just a little bit of paint here. Notice I didn't use any gasket material for these patches or silicone sealant. I just put some primer on both sides of this, let it dry to get it tacky. Not completely dry, and then I rivet it in nice and tightly. So, yeah, like I said, I just rivet this in after both sides were primed. Then, when this dries better, I'll just put another coat of another coat of red paint over it, and I'm done. Thank you for watching. I hope this was useful to you. Take care.